Yeah. I'm struggling with my 30 minutes. Not to spend the time, but yeah, I'm struggling with life, you know? Also, every day I'm like, I don't think I know how to pray. Lately, every single day, I'm like, what is prayer? Father Parks always jokes about this. He's like, I go through these different seasons and I think, do I even know how to pray? What is this? I was like, can't relate. And suddenly I'm like, oh,
Can relate.
I don't know if I know how to pray.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Beth and I were recently at a conference where Ralph Martin was giving a little testimony.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite way that he explained prayer that I
Yeah.
loved was prayer is paying attention to God.
So good.
So good.
I've always said like prayer is relationship, but I think that's even like a finer tuning of the definition.
I do think that paying attention has to come before a relationship.
Whoa.
Yeah. And in the relationship. But,
Sure.
But how do you have a relationship with someone you're not paying attention to? You're not seeing someone.
Jenna, you are saying more than you know here. I was listening to this podcast. A woman was describing like an experience in prayer. And she prefaced it by saying, now I had trained myself to hear the voice of God in order to like enter in and talk to the Lord about this like very intense thing. And she said, this was so cool. She said, I would practice like sitting in my room, prayer space, whatever, and I would write down everything I heard. So like the buzzing of the air conditioning,
Wow.
the like rustling of a piece of paper, the creak of my chair. I was like tuning my hearing, even my natural hearing, to learn how to pay attention. Isn't that so cool?
Yes.
And that began the training of her ear to hear the voice of God because she was quieting herself enough to listen within.
That's how I feel about poetry.
Yeah.
The best poems you've read are the ones that describe all of their senses of this particular specific quiet moment.
Yeah.
Like it's zeroing in on this and like exploding it.
Yes.
At all angles, interiorly, exteriorly, everywhere. And it's paying attention to your life, to that moment.
I think it's the way we describe something being like nuclear. It's like such a little thing, but you can feel the expansiveness of it. You can feel the gravity of it, even though it's like just like the sunlight in the trees. Something about that. Often I'll describe it as like the veil is lifted and suddenly you feel it viscerally, the importance of it, the beauty of it. And it like arrests you.
Yeah.
It stops you.
Yeah.
But you're right, the paying attention has to come first in order to see that. Like if you're moving so fast.
Right. That's why I think it's really cool what the Rescued devotional is inviting us into this Lent. I think we can like read the suffering servant in Isaiah 53 or read the passion narratives and not zero in on a moment or not see it.
Yes.
Like we've heard this story before. I know what happens. I think that's why the Passion of the Christ was such a beautiful work of art, is that when you have read hundreds of times before about Jesus falling for the first time, but then when you see him falling in the Passion of the Christ and you have that flashback with Mary and Jesus as a young boy, like this moment had depth and gravity as opposed to this like story that we've heard and this life that was lived that saved us. Like he was a real human and she was a real human, and this moment had expansiveness. I don't know how else to say that.
Yes. It wasn't an isolated moment. It was a glimpse into the whole of their relationship, the whole of their lives, the whole of salvation history.
Yes.
It was an expression of it.
When looking at Rescued and like what we're looking at when we see the suffering servant, how Susanna has led us through this narrative every week of placing ourselves in the scene. I just think that's what art does. I think that's what story does, and poetry and film, like we can put ourselves in it so that this wasn't just something that happened 2,000 years ago that means nothing to us now. But this was a real man who was tender, who was willing, who was meek, and we can see him now as opposed to just read about him in a book.
I'm just thinking like the difference between reading it as a story, reading it as a narrative, which is so important that we get the 30,000 foot, like this is the story, this is the fullness of it. But to deep dive a single moment like the fall, and even within that station, the look in Jesus's eyes, or the like readiness of Mary to go to her son. I love, like in art, I've been noticing, a friend sent me an image from like the Sacré-Cœur in France. Jesus, his foot is lifted, like he's coming toward you. There's like a movement to it. Similarly, these two women that I reflect on all the time, this art from the Church of the Visitation, faith and hope. Hope has a similar thing. Her foot is lifted. She's like coming toward you. There's a readiness there. There's a movement there. And so to deep dive a little detail like that in the gospel, in a piece of art, in a film, you're so good at talking about like paying attention to what moves you and bringing that to the Lord so that he can open it up even further, apply it to your life, make it personal for you, reveal something about his heart. There's so much possibility in Isaiah 53, which is why we stayed with one scripture kind of as the overarching theme, to be able to like deep dive those snapshots, those characteristics, and stay with a look, stay with a breath, stay with a single drop of blood.
Yeah, recently I, probably over the past month, just been in despair about like, who is God? Is any of this real? What's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Just struggling with like doubt. I wouldn't call that a vice. I don't know what I would call that. Struggle?
Sure.
Cross? So anyway, I just, then I'm like, I'm an imposter. What am I? What is this life? All of it, Every weekday of Lent, we go live in the app at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we share our takeaway from Rescued, from our Lent devotional. And so I went live that day, and something that the Lord has shown me in the past few years is that I have a devotion to the precious blood. And that day happened to be Chica's day. I think that was week 2. And she talks about the precious blood. She's doing her family's laundry. And she's like, I was searching for the greatest product to get these stains out of my family's clothes. And then related that to the Lord in terms of who puts blood on something to get the stains out. And that's what the Lord did for us. Like his blood washes us clean. But that's so like opposite of what we would think, right? Like we want bleach, not blood.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this happened to be on the same day that I was doing the live prayer in the app. I just got to go back to the cross. And I got to, in prayer, like as we're talking and sharing our takeaways and talking about the week and how Lent is and how we felt about this particular reflection from Chica, I was just brought back to the cross with Mary Magdalene, reminded of my favorite poem from Jessica Powers. Can't remember the title now, but I read it to them on the live. It's something mystic.
The Blood's Mystic?
The Blood's Mystic, maybe. The line in the poem that is my favorite is, the warm blood stilled and silenced her. And I just got to go back to that and talk about it and be there again. And the Lord was reminding me I was a real man who was fully God. This happened. This was a historical, real event that happened. And this blood was for you. So it's just a beautiful consolation that in my doubting or struggle, Like, thank God for blessed is she that I got to like pray with these women and like be reminded of the truth. Because I would just keep being the little kid and drowning and like not know the truth. But like his invitation to me to do this prayer with other women forces me to stop and to pay attention at a time where I feel like I can do anything but pay attention because of just how chaotic and crazy life feels. Like, not only pay attention, but be saved. Like, believe again. Remember the truth, the reality of Jesus and what he did for me and for everyone.
Thanks, friend. So many things. I mean, this is your Lent. I'm not trying to be silly, but that's very Lenty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For like this intense, dogged temptation to doubt.
Yeah.
To come up so viciously during Lent. And you know, as you were speaking, I was thinking, Jenna, you're in good company. Saint Therese wrestled with atheism.
Yeah.
Not only at the end of her life, but like all throughout her life. I think it's one of those things you can get so close you can't see, you know?
Yeah.
Again, if we were just talking, this conversation would be very different. But it's something, not to be flippant, but to like put in your back pocket. Like the precious blood is the entry point for you.
Yeah.
That's the anchor. Like you stake your life on the precious blood.
Yes.
You stake your faith on the precious blood, you know?
Yes.
And that's where you return again and again. I think it's particularly powerful, actually, for vanquishing this specific temptation. Like the Lord's giving you a template in a way that this is the place you come back to. The foot of the cross, the trickle of the precious blood for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with us.
We love praying with you and we want to do that some more. So hit the subscribe button, like this video, and turn on your notifications bell. Bing!